Hi, good evening, gentlemen. Uh, Welcome to the Wednesday night beginners clinic, and we are now live. Okay, in the past, from the beginning of this concession of doing this clinic, we started out with doing things on bench work. Um, we also did actual planning on picking an area, uh, your room size that you're going to use, the amount of room you're going to put your bench work into, and the type of bench work that we would put up. Some people like to use L girder bench work. Some people like to use regular uh, rigid, um, what do they call? Well, my mind's going already. Grid work. With the grid work, you can attach risers and all to it to elevate different levels of track. And then we have some that is going a little and trying something new, using straight styrofoam without any underlayment or bench work to support it.
Oh, that's crazy talk.
And it seems to work out pretty well. I have not tried working that way myself. Being old school, has always been taught to build a table. Um, in the beginning, it was just a flat plywood table. Then it went on to doing grid work where you could actually do hollows in between the areas and do different scenery effects. As your progression into the modern day type of model railroading, there has been so many different changes in the aspects of doing bench work. I've watched people now doing what they call split top bench work, where they actually have 4 or 5 different levels, and they'll actually make the track climb a hill, go back down a hill, just like in real life. Railroading is not flat by no means. There's always gradients that you have to contend with. I've seen the addition to second and third layers of bench work where you have your main, a secondary, and even a tri-bench sitting up on shelf work. Um, these are different designs that have come about over the years. Basic bench work, um, for the majority of us that's doing these layouts, is to use grid work and glue and screw everything together. I'll try to use 2x4 and, or excuse me, a 1x4 or a 1x3, and make an L out of it. Just shape it into an L and use it for legs. You have more stability with that than you would with a single 2x4, even with cross bracing, because it fastens from 2 different angles. Then we went into track work, laying track, designing your layout, and putting your track work down. Um, it's the second step to make sure that you have your track work down and rolling stock running to give you your um, uh, idea of where your layout's going and what to do with that. Um, let's stop at that point there and say, okay, between the bench work and track work, does anyone, even those that have watched the shows prior, have any questions on that? No question? Y'all can still hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Bill.
All right. Then we went into, after your track work was all done, we went across different ways of laying track. Um, some people, again, like to hand lay track using wooden ties, hiking the rails to it. Others like using um, flex track and cork road bed or foam road bed. Some people like using these sectional snap track, like a Cato or Bachman, and it's all personal preference, all what you want to do, what you want it to look like. Okay, then we went into basically starting up your scenery. What we want to do is figure out area that you're going to model and your era that you're modeling. If you're going to do a freelance and not worry about area or era, you can just put in basic scenery. If you're going to do a modeling of a particular railroad, then you're going to want to do a little research and see what was at either the modern day or the early era that you're planning to model. And look for your buildings, look for your all the different structures that you're going to need, simulate them, kit bash them, do whatever to try and get area to resemble what you're actually doing. Now, an era is a little bit more. You have to pick one that is either conversion area or modern day area. Now, steam is like just full steam engines, no modern day diesels or anything like that. Now, your conversion areas where they were converting from steam into diesel, you could run both, but then you have to restrict yourself back to early diesels to run in, along with that era. Now, your modern day, I have seen some guys, now this is really funny about it, but I've seen guys modeling steam era and then bring a Dash 8 down through the line and all, and it looks way out of place, especially with the old buildings and everything else he had. But then we have some that's in the modern day era that wants to run a lot of running a lot of steam. If you're going to run a modern day area, use your steam as like excursion trains. If you're going to run steam era, you know, I'm talking realism now. We're not talking about just playing trains on a tabletop. If you're going to model scale modeling, you don't want to mix your eras. Okay, but once you have it all planned out of the era and area that you're going to do, start looking for different ways of doing compressions. Like I have the D&H that I'm modeling in the steam era. They had a 52 stall roundhouse in Oneonta. If I was to put in, even in N scale, a 52 stall roundhouse, I would take up an area approximately 4 feet by 4 feet for the roundhouse itself. And that's a lot of room I'm taking up. So we have to go with compression. So I have half a circle, 180 degree, 24 stall. and I have to turn that in such a way as to make it look like it's actually bigger for the smaller area. That's called compression. Same thing when you're doing mountain scenes. You can't take and do a mountain from your fascia and go back 15 feet to give you the illusion of the mountains in the distance. So we use compression for that. In the same respect, in using compression, we use what is called forced perspective. That is where everything at the fascia is full scale, full size. Go back, say you're 24 inches deep. Go back 12 inches and reduce the size to, I'm doing N scale, so I'd have to reduce the Z scale. Z scale vehicles and all. If you're doing HO, you want to go to N scale. That's half of your distance of your layout to 24 inches. You're going to do forced perspective. You're going to make that look smaller. Now these are stationary, though we have had some guys have a little round around up inside of a mountain to actually run a smaller scale train up there. Now you get back towards your backdrop, you're going to either paint or have a backdrop scene of mountains. Take foam board and have a mountain on it and bring it out away from the backdrop. That way a shadow effect is on there and that makes it look like it's further forward. Come out a little bit further with maybe 2-inch, 3-inch foam or plaster, whichever way you're going to do it, and make that mountain come further forward. Now, when you're doing your mountains, all your backdrop stuff, mist it with a light coat of real light gray or white to give that distant effect. Everything in a distance is going to be a little more foggy than what you have up front because it's going to have that haze that you'll get off the between the sun and the earth, and that causes the effect or illusion of the distance. So you miss that, and the further forward you come, the less misting you have. When you get, say, 6 inches, 8 inches in from the backdrop, you can use smaller, little tractors, farm tractors and stuff, and you get trinkets for the N scale. Use bracelet trinkets, and you can paint them and put them up there. You can get pickup trucks and all that stuff in little charms. If you're doing HO scale on the front, do N scale halfway back, and then do Z scale back behind that. So you have more to work with than what we in the N gauge have. But this will give you that forced perspective, looking into a distance as things are getting smaller. In order to see them clear, you'd have to get a pair of binoculars. So this is what you're trying to achieve as you're building your scenery. In the same respect, you want to use different illusions. We have used mirrors extensively. We have used shadowing, using light behind the buildings to shadow with. We have used different areas of the layout to give the illusion of it being larger. Like I said, mirrors are great for doing that. And then you want to get a focal point. If you're doing backdrop scenes or something that is a picture or a mirror showing the continuation of a road or a river or something of that nature, and you want it there so the eye can see it, but you don't want the brain to register it, because the brain is going to stop and say, oh, okay, that must be a mirror, that must be this, or something like that. You're going to start looking for it. So if you put a focal point out in the front of your layout, um, an accident scene, a crew digging up the road, um, anything that, like Sven over in Germany, he uses two little road flares, little red orange LED lights to simulate road flares. Your eye focuses on that, even though you see what's behind it. The brain's not registering the fact that that is a picture on the wall. And this is the idea of getting the illusions that you want these people to see to add the realism to your layout. Now, going on beyond that, in the scenery itself, you can use over 100 different things to simulate what you're trying to model. Be it all natural stuff that you've gathered, or stuff that you buy through Woodland Scenics or Scenic Express. But you're going to use what you can to simulate what is there in real life. You're going to use dirts, sifted dirts, graded dirts, stones, the same thing. You're going to do different grasses, different colors, different thicknesses, different lengths. A ground foam's the same way. And as you get into looking at that aspect of doing your ground cover from the backdrop forward, don't do your layout from the fascia to the back, because whatever you've done in the front is going to get ruined by you working across it to do the back. So always go from the back forward. This is a good rule of thumb, because when you're doing mountain scenes and things like that, if you're working from the front, you're building your mountains, you're going to wind up getting all kinds of debris and plaster and everything all over your track, every area in the front. And as you're going back, all this stuff is going to get messy. You want to start at the back. If you're going to use plaster, webbing, we used to use old bed sheets. In fact, I've got 4 or 5 of them now. My wife has just changed over to all new bed sheets. So we take the old bed sheets and we cut them in strips, 2 foot by 1 foot. We get a 5-gallon bucket, mix our plaster and hydrocal mixed together. There's a wooden dowel that's 2 holes drilled on either side of the bucket. It's got a wooden dowel going across it. We dip the bed sheet in, rake it across the wooden dowel, turn it over, rake it again across the dowel, and then we can set it up in place. It makes for a stronger, a lighter weight plaster mock-up of your hills and your mountains than it does with paper towels. It's much stronger. A paper towel has a tendency, you poke your finger, plaster or no plaster, your finger will go through it. If you're I'm talking about light stuff that's not built up in layers. You take a bed sheet and you stick your finger to it, nothing's going to happen. You might crack the plaster, but you're not going through it. God, who's doing all the back and forth chatting here? Bing, bing, bing.
Hey, Bill, what you want to do, you want to go to your Hangout page real quick and click down the toolbar, and you can turn off the notification with the little gear sign.
Go to where now? Paul, go to where?
Hey, Bill, he said go down to your toolbar, and he said go down to your Hangouts, and you could turn off your notification.
Oh, okay. I'd have to. Oh, it's all right. I'd have to move all this over and everything. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Bed sheets make good for plaster covering for doing mountain buildup or hills or whatever. You can use your. There was references made to this last night on a show. You can use a cardboard webbing. You can use chicken wire. You could use rabbit wire. And I find over the wires you can actually form into rock outcroppings and things that you can put your material up over. It does make for a nice, strong, useful mountain. Now, if you use any of those methods, you're going to want to add rock molds or things like that to actually give you rock faces. That brings up another subject, foam and foam carving. This is what we did last week. Your foam is lightweight. You can work fast with it. Plaster takes 4 to 5 different steps to get into a rocky face looking kind of a hill or a mountainside or whatever. Foam takes 5 minutes. You don't have to wait for plaster to dry. You don't have to make rock molds or any of that stuff. You carve it right into it. And it makes for a great looking surface. The good part of it is that it's fast and lightweight. Now, a lot of people like to do, when they're doing a face for rock carving on top of your plaster mountain work, is to make molds or buy molds and cast plaster rocks and stick them to the surface. That works out great. But supposing there's a particular type of rock or a strata or something that you can't get in the scale or size that you want, and you want it to be, 18, 20 inches long, and they don't have a mold that long, which means now you have to cut it and try and match it and everything else, and it's going to look a little funny. 2 ways of getting away from that. You can, or 3 ways actually. You can actually do a thin layer of foam and glue it to the surface and carve your foam. You can actually take and hand carve it into plaster, putting plaster down. The only problem with that is when plaster will set up quick, and when it does, it gets awful hard to carve. You have maybe 15 minutes of working time, and if you're trying to do an 20-inch section of strata rock, one end is going to harden on you before you get to the other. And if you do it in sections, again, you're getting back to where you're trying to mate up the strata itself to continue on. Now, one thing I've found that works great for carving, because it takes a long time to, it'll be a paste when you put it on. It'll start to harden. You can start carving it. It takes up to 4 hours to cure hard, and that is water putty. It comes in a 1.5 pound can that's just a little bit bigger than a Pringles can, and stands about, I guess it's 16 ounces. But you mix it with water, becomes a putty. You can make it the consistency you want. I've even used it in rock molds and been able to pull the mold off of it without breaking it. Much better than using straight plaster. Now, water putty, like I said, takes up to 4 hours to really harden up. So you have a lot of working time that you can use for carving your strata with. That's just another suggestion for y'all. Okay, so far we've gone over just about everything that we've covered in the past. Are there any questions on focal points, illusions, compression, forced perspective, or anything on scenery? Mark? No.
Go ahead, Jack.
Go ahead. You gonna say something, Jacob?
What about any tips planning?
A what?
Any tips on track planning?
On track work?
Yeah, track planning.
Oh, track planning. Yeah. There's several ways of doing it. Number one flawless way is to hire somebody to do your track planning. Second is to take pieces of paper and what we used to use was graph paper and actually draw out your track plan that you're going to use, or try to get onto this and make it, one-to-one. Another way, which with modern technology, is there are a bunch of websites you can go to and actually download different track planners. There's SCARM, which is easy to use. There's 3D Planet. There's CAD Rail.
Extract CAD.
Extract CAD. There's
Extract CAD's what I use.
Yeah,
It's free also.
There's about 15 different ones out there. Some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay for. I myself, I like CAD Rail. I've dealt with CAD with a machine shop and all, so my computers are pretty much set up, and I run CAD Rail and get a design through that. But a first-time beginner that's just starting out, there is one called SCARM, and you can go online and download it and actually design your track plan. Hornby has one that's also free, and of course it's for metric versions, but that's easy enough to convert. But Hornby has one that is very much similar to SCARM. Only difference is you can't get the 3D effect. Andrew now, he's used SCARM and has set up different track plans, and I guess he wants to show one. So Andrew, if you want to pull that up and let someone see it.
Can you see that?
No, black screen.
Blank screen.
Okay, there it is.
That's using SCARM to give me a 3D effect of my layout. Where are we? On the right page. Yeah. Where am I? Right. There's another view of the second module. Here's where my problem is. I've got this module here. Now you'll notice main line comes in at the bottom and disappears up there, but everything's either side of it. Another view. There's a track plan of it. Everything's sort of in one. My idea, what I like opinion of, is to go to that one. Down the bottom left-hand corner, that's where it joins the module and comes round to a little gully valley sort of through the middle of town to the yard at the other end. Right. There's a 3D render of it. So I've got it broken up. Now I don't know whether I should go that one layout module or go the other one where it's going diagonally across the layout. And that's where I've got to need help making up my mind. Yeah, so I've got that one. If anyone's got the opinions on it, I'd be glad to take advice. Can you hear me, or have I dropped out?
Yeah, we can hear you.
So that one there is one option, and the other S-shaped one is the other option. I just don't know which way to go. Which one you reckon be more operational? Which one?
And I like that one. I like the diagonal. It's not as long a run through the industrial area, but it's much more prototypical switching and cosmetically it is than that S-curve through the middle, which again doesn't give you as long a run, but I think it'll be more enjoyable, and you've got switching points in both directions, you know, forward and trailing points. So it'll be pretty entertaining to have to run around to switch.
Yeah, it also gives you an out for your engines with the runaround track.
The way it's designed, this module here, the end's about there. I can swap it end to end with that module there. I'm definitely going to build that one, 12 dog bone to give me some rail fanning. So there's your diagonal one you talked about. And there's the S-bend one. We've got a yard and interchange down there, an industrial estate here, which then leads off down the bottom there to the folded dog bone. It's just sort of making out which one I'm going to do. Because this module by itself can be used as a simple end-to-end job if I wanted to. Just making up my mind or getting opinion on what's best.
Yeah, I think the one with the diagonal track in the center, like Andy said, would give you a more prototypical switching. Okay. All right, one of the things that we were talking about also is prototypical operation. You can set up that you can run your trains in prototypical switching between industries, freight yards. We also use a lot of what they call hidden staging yards. So your trains are always going somewhere and always coming from somewhere. You switch out your industries, you make up a train in your yard, and then you assign an engine to it, and you pull it out of the yard, you run it around the layout, and put it into hidden staging and bring out another one. Now that one's gone, say, to Boston. Now you've got another one coming in, say, like from the West Coast, and now you need to bring that in, bring it into your yard, break up the consist, get your switchers out, and start taking the cars over to the industries. And you switch out doing the same there. This is what they call realistic prototypical operation. You can set it up in different areas of the layout, put industries in different areas of the layout to give operation for more than one person. That way you have 2, 3 people come in and they want to operate the railroad with you. They have something to do instead of just sitting there watching one go around in circles. What we have been discussing most on the site is the realism. We're talking scale modeling, not toy trains or flat board tabletop. We're talking layouts. And these were the different aspects, different things that we've gone over this period of time. I know you guys have a lot of questions on the different things we've discussed. I would like to hear from you all so we can have, suggestions and tips and things like that. I know some of you guys already have layouts going and can add to this. How about you, Dave?
Yeah, I got a couple things I've learned myself. When I first got in my first bench work, I didn't know what size or what shape I wanted to go with, and I did a rough plan on my floor with masking tape, and that's how I figured my exact design layout that I came up with.
Well, that's one way of doing it, yeah.
Not very many people have the room or the space just to build all out layout right away. They have to think ahead of time, and you only get very little amount of money, despite the fact that you have a love for the hobby. But it's always better to plan out before you waste money.
Yeah, that's true. Scott McDonald had gotten a hold of me and asked me if I would design a layout for him. And I says, how much room do you have? And he says, I have 18 by 18 feet. And I said, okay. So I worked out something for 18 by 18. The next time he and I got together, I said, do you have a piece of chalk? And he didn't have any, and I said, you got an old piece of wallboard. And that he had. And we got him to actually draw out, foot by foot, the whole table all the way around the room. And he said he did not know how I knew where his door coming into from the house or the garage door was. But I had planned this out for him, and it worked out really great. We had 2 peninsulas in the 18 by 18, and the widest point of the whole railroad was 32 inches. And now he's changed from HO and went to N scale, and going back into the house because he said the concrete was giving off too much moisture, and which is not good for your legs, your knees, or your equipment. So, but we have Troy sitting there. Do you have anything to say about bench work or track work, Troy?
What Paul said is absolutely correct. If you're going to be designing a layout, or even if you have a plan, take and draw it up on the floor. Especially the bench work, it'll really help out to see the actual shape on the floor. I've done that with every layout that I have, and it's worked perfect. It gives you the great idea of the space that you have. It lets you know where you can actually add on to. It'll let you know how big your walkways are. That's one of the biggest things. Make sure you got room to move around. I see a lot of these guys that are building layouts and there's no room to breathe. And you just can't have that. You got to be able to go ahead and be able to move around inside your layout and not be bumping elbows, especially if you have one other guy that's even running with you. Like my layout, it's actually designed to have 5 to 6 people to go ahead and run it. So I need to go ahead and have room with it. I couldn't have in my given space to have like any type of islands without bumping elbows. That was one of the biggest things. One of my biggest mistakes that I made on my old layout even. 3 feet of room for an aisleway is really not that much. The more the better. When you're designing your layouts, you don't need to have track inside of every single nook and cranny on the layout. Railroads just don't run like that. I see a lot of guys that are building 4x8s and bigger even layouts that are my size, and they feel that they got to put track on every square inch of everything. And less is more. Just remember that. Less is more. So go and get the look of realism or operations, or even if it's just a figure 8 or something, you don't have to have a lot. I see a lot of guys that will take and put in a turntable on a 4x8 sheet that's got 10, 12 stalls on there. You know, a turntable takes up a lot of room. You got to be able to plan ahead for it, and it's not just for something like that. You got to plan ahead for everything. Every single aspect of the layout has to be planned ahead. When you think you have it planned, it ain't planned. Plan some more. Even my layout, my dad designed this layout, and we thought it was very well planned out. Well, you know, when push came to shove, and it came time to start actually building it, more stuff came up. Don't get frustrated with it, and don't be afraid to go and make changes. Don't be afraid to go ahead and make mistakes.
You're going to make changes, and well, there's no real mistakes. We call it a learning curve, but you're going to make changes. It's just the way it happens. Track might look good going here or there, but when you start putting industries and scenery in, well, now it don't work. So now you're going to change things.
Yep, plan ahead. Look at all the buildings that you want to get. Go ahead and get the measurements. Go to different websites, find the buildings. A lot of websites will have the dimensions of them. Get the dimensions written down. Take notes of what the building is, what you plan on running with the building, and write it all down. And that's the biggest thing. You don't really even need a mock-up. You just need to go ahead and get the actual dimensions of the building. If it has an overhang, plan for that overhang, especially if a track's going to be running up next to it. Otherwise, you're just not going to have the room for it. An NMRA gauge will definitely help you out with that, because on the one side of the NMRA gauge, it gives you building clearances and how close you can run your track to the edge of the building. And it'll get it prototypically close where you're actually up onto the building the way it would be pulling up inside that industry.
Yeah, I always use a magic marker on a bare surface before any scenery is put down, and get the measurements of the building where I want to put it, and I'll measure it out and do a dotted line. And if I ever have to change it or move it, then the dotted line becomes null and void. And when I finally get it to where I actually want to put the industry, then I can mark it in a solid line. And that way I know this is where it's going to go. It works out a whole lot better in the planning stages of putting your layout together than it does to just throw track down and then sit there, you know, every week picking it up, moving it over, doing this or whatever. That can get frustrating. So do your planning ahead of time. And again, like I said, area and era. Add that into your planning structure. Any other questions? All right, getting back to the scenery with the rock. Like I said, the foam carving that I did last week. We had Andy do some of the Celotex to do strata. Now, some of you guys weren't here and you didn't see that. So, Andy, you want to bring that up again?
Yeah, which I don't have it with me. I'm out of town. But I've just been I've been experimenting with every little method known to man, find out different things I like. And really, the biggest thing is I've been looking for an alternative to styrofoam or to plaster. The only place that I use plaster now is for rock molds. And I'm not happy that I use plaster for rock molds. I don't like working with plaster for a lot of reasons. It's messy, it's brittle, it's heavy. It doesn't work well with my benchwork method. That was something Bill mentioned earlier. Is that I think it depends on the way you build your layout. But my layout does not need for a human to need to climb on it. It's at its deepest point, it's 2 feet deep. It's at eye level, so climbing on it would be rather difficult, if impossible. So it doesn't have to be doesn't have to have a wood framework. It's entirely styrofoam. Means you can't climb on it, but it also means that I need to keep things light and thick. I'm also doing eventually a multi-deck layout. It will be eventually 4 decks of layout, so they need to be really, really thin. And the plaster rock work is one of the few things right now that's giving me a little bit of a pause, and I'm holding up on some of my rock work looking for an alternative. I'm trying some resin casting methods, etc. So I tried the Celotex to do a rock style that's really prevalent in Appalachia, which is what I model, and that's the horizontal strata that's formed with sedimentary rock. And the Celotex is a really good method, really, really light, and incredibly easy to reproduce. I mean, you can produce a lot of it, large areas of it really, really quickly. At the moment, I'm reasonably happy with the work for slight background scenery, although I wouldn't want it right up front just yet. So, but right now, I'd still consider it entirely an experiment. For HO scale, and especially for a fine scale layout like I'm trying to reproduce, I would say at the moment I have not found a substitute for plaster. I like foam carving. I like plaster carving. I like carving Sculptamold, which is a little bit lighter variant of plaster because it has paper mache in it. And I like the Celotex. But for foreground, if it's right up in the front and center, I haven't found any substitute for plaster rocks yet. But I'm trying multiple methods. I'm going to try to cast some resin here soon. It's a lot lighter material, and there's some people who are using traditional rock molds and casting a material that's closer to being styrofoam. It's a 2-part, kind of like expanded styrofoam, but it doesn't expand. So I'm going to try some of that material out. But any ideas on any other methods to produce rock work? That's a really critical part of my scenery, and I'm not real happy with plaster like I said, for a lot of reasons. Weight is the biggest reason. Part of the reason I've stuck with plaster though is that it's so easy to color. I mean, a few washes of some. I like working with inks, India inks and others, and dyes and inks are a lot easier to work with if you're not artistic. And I'm not an artist; I'm an engineer, so it's a lot harder for me to take acrylic paints and paint something to look like a rock. That's the way Dave Frary always did it, and he's a lot more artistic than me, obviously. And acrylics are a lot harder for me to work with, but a plaster rock and some washes of ink, you really can't screw that up. Go a little black on it, go with a bunch of light colors, then put a little black over top of it, fill in some gaps. It looks like a rock every time.
Thank you, Andy. I'm glad, though, that you did try that Celotex. That was something we've used old school a long time ago, and it does make a good strata.
For a little bit of a background scene, it does, and I'm going to use it up on top of some mountain. I have areas where it's a tall grass field, and it has little sections where the grass drops out and there's some strata visible. It's perfect for that particular application. Now, right along my track work, I have a cliff line that's about 2.5 feet long and 10 inches tall. And I wanted to use it there, but I'm afraid that it's not fine enough detail for me to be happy with in that particular application.
Well, you know you can wire brush it to make it finer.
Yeah, and I did. In my experience, the wire brushing tends to take some of the detail out of it, but you have to. Otherwise, it ends up looking real fuzzy. So you kind of have to take a brush to it. And then, and definitely painting it with Mod Podge made a big difference too. And one thing I'll tell you that working with that material is it does not look at all satisfying until you slap a coat of paint on it. You know, as you put Mod Podge on it, it starts to look really muted, like it doesn't have a lot of detail. And then you slap the first coat of paint on it, and it starts to really take a little, you know, take a little texture.
Yeah, it makes it pop.
Yeah, it really does a lot.
Excuse me, guys, not to interrupt. There's a question from Model Railroader, because you can't talk or chat. He would like to know, would you guys recommend foam and plaster for mountains or just use pre-made mountains?
No, make them unequivocally make them. And actually, that'd be my answer for anything you said. Anything you say, what's the best way to do it? Produce it. Make it.
Yeah, definitely. If you go back, go to my YouTube channel and check out the last week's show, you will see how I actually carved foam. And you can get very realistic looking rock faces and mountainsides with the foam. Very simple, very cheap, very lightweight. Don't have to worry about adding all that extra weight onto your layout. You don't have to worry about the mess, the foam that you're actually carving away from it can be picked up with a shop vac. And I like to hang on to some of it for lightweight talus. But if you're going to use plaster, you can use going cheap route, use paper towels, and the method that Ron Kleiss uses with the cardboard strips to make your forms, and then add your rock molds to that. That's fairly lightweight.
And Dave has a good idea for the replacement of paper towels. So much so that even Ron Kleiss, who's done it for 25 to 30 years, using paper towels, he has now adopted Dave's method of using dryer sheets. So collect those up after they've been used, or buy a few boxes of the generic ones and use them. They're a lot stronger than paper towels. I don't like paper towels because of the texture that they leave in your scenery, and they require too much overcoat of plaster to smooth it out, which makes it a lot heavier. I always liked cheap bed sheets much better, but
Yeah,
I think Dave's onto something with the dryer sheets. I think he's really got a good idea there. So combination of some cheap bed sheets cut into 1 foot squares and those dryer sheets for smaller areas, I think would be perfect.
Okay, any other questions? Viewers out there have any questions? Nothing, huh?
Nothing on my end.
Okay. For you other people here that don't know Paul, he's a friend from another group and has said he would be my IT guy. So I have somebody here to help me out. Makes things work a whole lot smoother. I'm working on having a guest for next week. Looks very promising. Because we're stepping up now, because we have gone through, let me list this again. We have gone from bench work, planning, bench work, planning, and track work, doing compression, force perspectives, illusions, focal points, gone into the scenery, into different types of materials and aspects of your scenery, plaster, border putty, foam, We have done foam carving. We had a little demonstration of that last week. That worked out real well. We've also done the Celotex. So the next step that we're going to be going into is the use of riser areas for structures, and then we're going to go into doing some structures. Now, the structures will be from anything from N scale to G scale. I think his actual buildings are HO, S, and O gauge. And of course, they can be sized down and adapted for other scales. But we're going to see how things work out and see if we can get him in here. And it'll be a surprise as to who it is, but I've been working on it with a lot of different people for months now. There's a lot of people that I know personally, and we have to work into schedules. This is the bad time of the year. Winter time is always much better to get people as a guest, but we'll see what happens.
Bill, here's another question from the same person. He said, for trees, what would I consider for making them?
What would he consider?
He's asking you what you guys would consider.
Okay. We have done a segment on trees when I was on Thursday night hangout with Johnny, and I actually made some trees, oak trees actually, out of grape stems. By the white grape, it's green in color, and beautiful stems from them. They make beautiful armatures for your trees. Let me get one here. You can, these are simple, they're cheap, plus it's healthy. Now, let me bring this up and present it. Okay, there is a grape stem, and it is one good-looking armature for making a tree. And let's see if we bring up some of the finished products here. This is one. These are all grape stems now. They make nice oak trees. And then I have this palette here. It's kind of full of them. And then I use some lighter material. Of course, I got a dead one there. I have some lighter materials that we use for the smaller deciduous trees that you'd find around people's homes and buildings. Now, you have to remember, I'm in N scale, so.
Say, Bill.
These are fairly huge for N scale.
Bill.
Yes.
You got any better light in your room there? It's hard to see those trees.
If I put another light on it, it's going to make it too bright.
It looks like just a black blob.
That any better?
You can see the shadow of it, but you can't really see any detail. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that helped out.
Okay, blinding me, but anyway. And like I said, that's made from grape stems, which
Yeah, those do look good.
And bring this back up.
Yeah. Very nice.
And then the ones on this end are, like I said, the smaller the dishes that we use
And
near
those are
home.
great as well.
Yeah. And also, I have some that are straight up like this. We can make some conifers out of. Use a little bit of flock on it and some static grass and make some nice conifers. But that's one way of doing it. Another way are what they call twisted wire. Making your armatures out of twisted wire.
Yeah. That's the way Gordon Gravitt, one of the widely regarded as one of the best tree modelers there are from Great Britain. He uses twisted wire, and I'm going to do something on my screen. These are some super tree material glued to a stick. Makes a really nice foreground tree, but takes a lot of time. But and then I use a lot of super tree material, and I use leaf flake. So like this tree here to the right, I also use the leaf flake to make vine material. And then here, the glue's wet, you can see, but you can see my background trees using, using the super tree material. Here's a stick, and there's like that. Forget that one in the middle. That one's temporary. But these background trees are super trees. And I've got some new pictures now that the glue's dried, and I've planted trees there, but they're not on here yet. But I use a lot of the super tree material, and I'm real happy with it. But you need some diversity, so you either need to use some grape stems or some other sticks to add some trees that don't look the same to it. So don't just use one method to make trees. In my opinion, use multiple methods.
Exactly. Continue with what I was saying though is the wire, twisted wire, you can make your own out of that. Another way is the super trees. I suggest, and I have been telling everybody this all along, is to go online and order you a hard copy of Scenic Express catalog. It's like the modeler's Bible. It has everything and anything in there that you could possibly use in doing scenery work. It is the foremost way of checking to see what you could use in putting your model railroad together. Some of the different companies out there have ready-made trees. They're beautiful, they're nice. Some of them, if you go to Heike or Knock, you can actually get scale-sized trees. The rest of them are undersized. And that's been a problem with the hobby all along, is that most of the trees that are ready-made are usually undersized for the scale that they're claiming. And Andy and I have discussed this once before too. The idea is to get a realistic looking tree using the cheapest way possible. Otherwise, you're only going to have a handful of trees on your layout. A layout is going to take thousands of trees. Any good size layout is going to take 100,000 trees. And you want to be able to produce them not only as quickly as possible, but as cheaply as possible. And super trees is one of the ways. Grape stem is another way. Twisted wire is another way, if you have access to a lot of wire. I go to a junkyard and get the coils off the back of TV sets, the old TVs at the tubes. picture tube. There's a coil on the back of that tube, and I slide that off, and it's got a lot of wire in there, and I strip them down and coil them up and use the wire for making tree armatures. But many different ways of we heard you, Troy. Many different ways of making
Sorry about that.
loads and loads of trees. If you ever checked out the Suncoast Model Railroad Club YouTube video, it's called Cab Ride, Suncoast Model Railroad Club. Every tree on that layout I made. There's only 1,300 trees on that thing that I've done, and now they want me to make more, and they have a 100-foot by 40-foot warehouse building with no center columns. It's a full 40-foot span for the roof. They have 9 peninsulas, and now they're adding a 10th and last peninsula. So it's huge. And it's going to be on the Roundy Round for the regional convention of the NMRA. So, but if you go online and you look that up on YouTube, it's called Cab Ride for the Suncoast Model Railroad Club. And you can see realism, how it was done on that layout. Any other questions? Anyone else? Any more viewers? Questions? Like I was saying before, you want to make trees as fast as possible. Sometimes it's not going to happen. Andy took, was it 8 hours, Andy, to put a tree together? Hand gluing branches onto it and everything?
That one. Yeah, I wouldn't do that for most trees, but for some foreground trees, I need a dozen or so, and I will get faster. But foreground trees are going to take you 4 or 5 to 8 hours, and I think that would be true whether you use the wire method. Like I said, Gordon Gravitt literally wrote the book on trees. He has a couple books out there on producing good deciduous and conifer trees, and he uses the wire method, and he's widely regarded as the best at that. And for foreground trees, they are incredible, and I'm going to make some of those, but they're going to take you some hours, so only use that for foreground trees. You need to use that, and you need to make some nice foreground trees. But for some background trees, you've got to make them fast. I originally estimated I needed about 50 trees per square foot, but counting undergrowth and small trees that you need for underneath those to fill in the forest floor, you actually need 50 large trees and quite a few small ones per square foot. On my layout, that equates to somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 trees. So, and even though super trees are relatively inexpensive because you buy a big old box of them, you get about 30 or 40 out of a $25 box. When you start putting that together, if you're paying almost $1 a tree and you need 4,000 trees, you can do the math, that's going to get expensive. I also think you get a lot of benefit from diversity. So if you can use some other natural materials that you can collect, free, minus a little bit of your personal time, that would help you out a lot. I think super trees are awesome, and I think using some of them would be really, really valuable and really good. Hey, there's Ron, and Ron has a material he uses for trees that has been really popular for a number of decades, and it is free.
Andy, I just want to say thank you very much.
I cranked up the heat, hoping to kind of sweat it out of them.
You just made me sit down and start thinking about how many trees I need on my layout.
I'm sorry about that. It takes a lot, man. It takes a lot.
Well, I'll just take some of your trees at 3 hours apiece. How's that sound?
Yeah, those foreground trees are tough, man. I mean, and I like the gluing method for some of them. And I'm gonna do some wire trees, Gordon Gravett style. So let's do some of those, and then we'll see how that works. I haven't tried it yet, but the next few weeks I will try one of those.
You know, another method for making conifers is to take a dowel rod or a square piece of balsa and trim the edges off, take it to a point, drill little holes in it all the way around in different areas, and use some Caspia fern and glue the Caspia fern, small ends of it, and glue it into there. It makes a beautiful looking conifer. And
Also very time consuming, but yes, it does. It is beautiful.
Yeah, and the Caspia fern you can buy at Michael's. I don't know if Hobby Lobby's handling it yet. I'd asked for it, but I got some at Michael's, and like I said, the trees look real. I mean, they're really nice.
You follow Luke Towan, I think's his name, but Luke something. I think he's an Aussie. Has a YouTube channel on doing some scenery and stuff. He's really good at it. He has a material he uses for conifers that he basically dries out, takes all the green leaf material off, and uses just the understem with some static grass or foam. And it makes conifers very good looking conifers very fast. You need to look up his YouTube channel, or actually I'll find it and post it in here. He's got a really good method.
Yeah, he's I think he's in England, South England, down Suffolk area.
Oh yeah, okay. I knew he was. I wasn't sure if it was Aussie or British, but he has a method. He just recently posted a video on using drying out this natural material, and it has a really good branch structure that more approximates a conifer, and it's much better than I used the wire brush and made a few, and they do make good background trees, and you should use it. I mean, it's a great method to use, but it's strictly a background tree.
All right. Well, like I said, tonight was a review and a question and answer. Actually, haven't had very many questions, but we're still open for any. I know you guys have got ideas in the back of your heads there, things that you're going to want to ask about. Thing is, I wouldn't be on here for a beginner's clinic if I didn't have the experience behind it.
There's Luke's channel. You guys really should check him out. He has some of the best methods for tree manufacture, especially conifers.
Yeah, he does. Okay, one other thing that we started out with in the very beginning that I really need to go over is tools. The kind of tools that you're going to need to do a model railroad. We went over this, I think it was the second show, but you don't need to buy or grab all these tools at once. Start with basic doing bench work. You're going to need a drill. One would be okay, two would be great, so you don't have to keep changing the drill to a Phillips head. You're going to need a saw of some type to cut your bench work with. You're going to need squares, levels. That's just doing bench work. But then you're going to get into doing other things, doing scenery work and things like that. And then, you get knives. If you're going to do foam work, a bread knife is almost a natural essential. a steak knife, screwdrivers, dental picks, utility knives, X-Acto knives. Then you're going to need different types of glues. We went over all the different glues that you would need, the types and the reason for each type. You're going to need, number one, when you're laying your track, you're going to need a track gauge. Always think about that. Yeah, a track gauge is going to be your number one best buddy when you're laying track. The NMRA type gives you track gauge, wheel gauge, offsets. What else is there on that thing, Troy?
You mean for the NMRA gauge?
Yeah, it has offsets for building and
It'll check
structures.
your wheel sets. It'll check your
Wheels.
points. It'll check your flanges. It'll check your clearances between the rail and your actual buildings. Gosh, now I'm trying to freaking think, and I don't even have mine even handy right now. All your flanges and stuff. You know, and that's probably one of the biggest things. I see a lot of people. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube and stuff, and get up there on Facebook, and I see a lot of nice layouts and stuff that these guys are building, and then I see people that are having problems with derailments and stuff, and I'm telling you, check everything with the NMRA gauge. Just because you go out and you buy a piece of rail like this, don't assume that it's correct.
Exactly.
I have had rail that is out of gauge. This is just being run through a mill, whether if it's Atlas, whether it's Keiko, Microengineering, Sayonara. I've seen it in every track. You can have rail that is out of gauge. That's the biggest thing. When I'm setting my track, I always end up checking it, especially points and stuff like that. That NMRA gauge should be by your side all the time. And look at me, I'm not practicing what I preach. But yeah, it is definitely a must-have. You got to have one. I mean, they're only like $5 or $6. You know, I think HO scale is probably a little bit more expensive. I'm not sure as I don't have one. But it can't be anything over $10 for an NMRA gauge.
Yeah. Main two things are your NMRA gauge and your
Pair of rail nippers, that will really ease your mind and help out a lot. And some needle files and stuff, triangular files, splat files. It'll all help out with ease of actually setting track and everything else.
Hey Bill, not to interrupt, I do have a picture of the HO scale track NRA gauge. I can show it what it looks like if you want me to.
Yeah, go ahead.
That way people have a better idea what it looks like when they need to pick one up.
Okay, yeah, see the HO scale has the coupler height, and I don't believe that the N scale does.
No, it doesn't.
But that offset over there on the right-hand side, that is for buildings. Where it's got that angle piece right there that comes out. That's for the edge of buildings and stuff. And it's also the height of a tunnel as well. For clearance for like double stacks and stuff like that. But if you're modeling like an older era like I am, you won't end up using it for that.
Yeah, N scale is a little more pronounced in different areas of the gauge.
Yeah, and I'm not finding mine right offhand. I have been off into so many different areas of my layout trying to get some stuff here ready, and I'm sorry, I just don't know where it's at right offhand.
But yeah, it's just the tools that you're going to need. Like I said, you don't need to buy everything all at once. Get your stuff to do your bench work with first. Once that's up, then you can go on to setting up. After you do your planning and you get your track work, you're ready to put that down. Make sure you have an NMRA gauge and a scale ruler for your scale. Two of the major things that you'll need in completing the layout. So I've got 4 boxes. I have a machinist chest full of tools. If you're doing the smaller gauges like N scale, I also recommend getting a railer. It's a little ramp that you put your car on, roll it down onto the track. Makes it so much easier when you have big fingers like mine that you can't get underneath to set the trucks up on the rail. They work out so nice. I do not like using re-railers in the track. It's not prototypical. Some of them even make them try to look like a road crossing, but no, it doesn't work.
Regular track gauges, these right here will help you out too if you want to stick with a specific size curve for like main lines and stuff like that, or to go ahead and keep rail straight. These things work wonders. There's another company, I can't remember the name of it now. But anyhow, they produce a tool that's something like this for HO scale and N scale, which also helps out for trimming down all your rail and everything else, even for soldering. I myself don't use a soldering one. I end up using a quarter for soldering, but these gauges will actually help you straighten track out. You can use these gauges right here for actually making your bends and stuff as well, just by giving it just a slight little turn and just continue working it back and forth. And then you can go ahead and get a nice gradual bend with it. These things right here work really nice. And the same thing with the straight tools. If you want to straighten them back out, you just basically just snap them up inside of there and in between the rails and just slide it on down, and it'll actually straighten the rail right here right back out for you. And it gets it pretty darn close to perfectly straight, but you really don't want any rail perfectly straight anyhow, because there is no railroad that lays perfectly straight rail.
All right, any other questions, or anyone have any ideas or anything?
Yeah, speaking of tools, Bill, one of the mistakes I made when I bought my new tools, don't go for the cheapest tools, because if you go for the cheapest saws or drills, you're going to have problems with them later on. For example, I have a reciprocating saw that will not cut flush up and down or straight across without curving on you. So consider your expense of buying a better tool than a $40 or $50 tool that's not going to cut perfect for you.
I fully agree with you there on that one, Paul, because like they say, this is a hobby. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, and even on a small layout like a 4x8 even, it's just not going to be built overnight. Take your time with it, save up. There's an old saying, it's called pay me now or pay me later. And if you save up for the good stuff, it's going to work out a lot more to your benefit in the long run by doing that little bit of extra research instead of just getting your money, during the month of your paycheck and blowing it all right away. It's really not worth it. Take your time before you go and make that purchase and do some checking up on it, read reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, everything in the hobby is research and time. Don't get in a rush. Like I've seen some. Well, It's not a bad reflection on Scott. He was just determined to get as far as he could. But in 6 weeks, he did more on that layout than most guys would do in 6 months to a year. He just kept droning at it, you know, and he got to a point of being obsessed. And I had to tell him, slow down, go take a break. You know, you're getting yourself frustrated. Some people are like that. They are try to be overachievers. They try to be too centralized, focused on one particular thing. This is a hobby. You know, you're not getting paid by the hour to do this thing. Take your time. If you start getting a little frustrated, walk away and come back to it later. Because if you keep going on, you can wind up breaking yourself, you know, and losing interest. You're going to have a lot of money invested. You know, you just take your time and relax. But
Always.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, always walk away from the layout when you start working on a section, and take back and walk away and work on a different section and keep going back and looking what you had accomplished. Because sometimes you'll end up noticing a mistake or something that could have been added in, like a crossover, another turnout, or maybe you got too many turnouts sitting down there. It's not going to work for the operations. Double check everything. I mean, I spent almost 3 weeks to go ahead and make one drawing for a control panel, and I went ahead and drew it all up, took a picture of it, and every time I walked downstairs, I would walk up there in front of it, look at it for maybe 2 minutes, turn around and walk away. I knew that there was something about the panel that I did not like, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And when you sit there and stare at it, you're not going to notice it right away. Walk away from it. Finally, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was laying in bed. I woke up. I pulled up the phone as I would snap pictures of it, and then all of a sudden I knew it. I seen my mistake right away on the control panel, which it wasn't going to work. It did not look good. It didn't look professional. So I turned around and drew up another one. So yeah, walk away from it. Go back, look at it. Don't sit there and rush it. My layout is. Now this is actually my 4th layout now, and I'm almost a year and a half into this, and I'm still not even running trains yet on here.
Anyone else have anything to add? Ron? Do you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, to fill in Troy about control panels, not only that you want it to look good on the outside, but you also have to keep in mind what you're going to put on the inside of it. That way you don't cut yourself short of space when you do your control panel. That's one of the mistakes I've made on my own. So not only that you have to think about the outside of your layout and the surface of your layout, you're also going to have to think about the inside of your layout for things to work out perfectly. Nobody doesn't get it all in one shot or one try at one time. So you kind of have to step back, look at it, like Troy just said. If you rush into it, it's going to cost you money and time, which is I made that mistake with mine skill. So I've learned to slow down and step back and look at it.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You have to think about if you're going to put. I mean, some guys put cup holders up there on their layout, or they'll use car carts for operations. Your throttle plugins, all that stuff, all takes play when you're trying to build something. Like I said, when you're building a layout, you have to think 30 to 40 steps ahead. And it's a hard thing to do, but you got to try to do it as much as you can, because when you work on one area, it's going to affect the other area as well. So you got to really pay attention to what you're doing and take your time, walk away from it, look at it, and make sure it is it is exactly what you want. Even Ron, he's been working on a bridge scene. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but he wasn't sure what he wanted to do there with it. If he wanted, what kind of a bridge that he wanted to put up in there, whether it be a trestle or whatever, it's something that you need to think about. And I don't think Ron's, fully decided to go ahead and put anything in there yet because he wants to make sure of his decision before he actually goes ahead and does it. So don't jump up into it, and don't jump up into anything else either. Take your time with it. It's a hobby.
And another thing you need to keep in consideration is you have to keep in consideration where your bench work is and where you're going to be laying your tracks and your turnouts. Because sometimes you can put your turnouts over a cross member on the bench work, and you're going to have issues.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's perfect planning right there.
One thing you have to take and put in the back of your mind, that your railroad, even though it's a hobby, think of it as a big major corporation, and you research and develop, R&D. You're going to do research before you develop anything. So as long as you keep that in mind, hey, this is what I want to do. Go research it, develop it, make it into what it has to be. There's too many times that somebody will just throw track and then just throw something up in there, and they'll get it all scenic and everything else, and then they'll either have some people say something about it, or they'll look at it several times. I don't like that, and then now you got scenery in and everything. And now you got to tear it all apart. Don't be in a rush. Just research and develop. You got something, Ron?
I was just going to chime in what Troy was talking about. When I originally designed the gorge area, I'm all about big wooden trestles and stuff, and I'm looking at the area. And after looking at it and contemplating, I was always in the back of my mind like, well, I'm not sure if I wanted to have a wooden trestle there. So I'm going to put all this time and effort into this nice gorge scene, waterfalls and everything. And the wooden trestle would almost block it because there would be so much structure there. So I started looking into it, and I started thinking about what I'm modeling, and where the scene is just past my main transfer yard and everything. It would be a little bit more modernized. It wouldn't have an old trestle kind of thing right next to this yard. So I was looking into some of the steel, like microengineering type trestles and stuff, and that would actually open up the scene. You wouldn't be completely blocked with this forest of trestles and wood and stuff, so you'd actually see the scene that I'm putting all this time and effort into. And I think I'm going to definitely go that direction because I think it's just going to work out a lot better. I'm going steel. Staying away from the wood. I got tons of other bridges on this layout that are going to be wooden and stuff, so just the big wood trestle is out the door, and I think I'm going steel.
Which is probably a great choice for that area because, just like you said, it's not going to be blocking everything else that's up in the side of there.
Yeah, I'm looking at other people's videos and pictures and stuff, and they look impressive. I mean, there's architectural wonder, all these crisscross timbers and members, and all bolted together, have tons of detail. But then the way I envision this gorge, it's really lush and stuff. It's not just going to be a bunch of rock. It's going to have trees and all kinds of stuff overhanging this thing, and a lot of detail in the gorge itself that I want to show off. And the steel structure will definitely do that.
Not only that, but you can get a great weathering effect with a steel bridge.
Yep. Yeah, I did a pretty neat truss bridge on my dad's layout with a little weathering technique.
Uh-huh.
But, now my skills are a little bit better. I think I'll look even better now.
Yeah. That's another thing, too. Don't be afraid to use different weathering techniques in doing, like, bridges and stuff like that. I like using just salt and paint your base under cover with a rusted tint in areas, and then sprinkle salt over it while it's still wet. Let it dry, and then paint your regular color that you're going to use, and like a silver or a aluminum type cover over it, and then dull coat it, and then go back and chip away where the salt was, and it'll actually flake like it's real rust underneath it.
Yeah, I'll have to try that out. I've heard of it. I've never tried it out though.
Yeah. Check with Dave next time and have him put his camera on his bridge. He did that exact same way, and it looks real. I mean, oh God. I mean, you look at it and just picturing it as being a real bridge standing there, you know?
Yeah, that's cool. I'll give it a shot. I want to give a shot to those pan pastels too. I've heard a lot about them. I'm curious, even if it's just for structures and cars, but I wonder how it is on bridges and scenery and stuff. I heard it's pretty neat stuff.
I would rather push that more toward weathering cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, cars and engines. I've seen it on buildings also.
Yeah. I have used that method many times on rolling stock and structures, using rubber cement, using primering a building first with like a gray or a white, and then going over it with a darker color, and then using an eraser and kind of work the outer color back down to the primer color. It makes a good aging.
Oh, okay.
And using
action kind of.
yeah. If you use the rubber cement in between those, it makes it easier to pull off the paint. But when I do that, I use a toothpick and make lines and all that way. When I'm doing it, I'm not flaking off a giant piece down to the bare wood, you know, it's or the primed wood. You're taking it off in streaks and areas, you know, how big you want that area to look. And there's about 10 different ways of doing structures. Using India ink washes on your fine scale wooden kits, and then giving a light spray of primer over top of it before you do anything for your weathering technique, that when it does go back down to near the raw wood, it actually shows grain in the wood underneath the primer. That makes for realistic looking structures, realistic weathering. Like I said, once I get my layout going, I'll be able to show all these things that we've been talking about. I'm locked right now. That's my problem. 73 years old, bad hips, bad knees. I've got 2 large pieces of carpet in the hallway that I can't even get down the hallway with. I have to change carpeting in one room, so all the furniture has to come out. Lay carpet, put all the furniture back in to give me my room to start the layout in. And so I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I don't know if you can see this or not.
Yes, that is a very good kit. Let me present that.
It's a rust antiquing set. This stuff right here works very well. It is iron, and you are actually creating real rust on your structures or whatever it is that you're using.
Yeah.
Big Bill Graham, he's the one who originally started using this. So I picked some up and I did a couple little test pieces, and I really like the results of it. I think I paid $12, $13 for this set, and I like the results of it so far off my test piece. So
Yeah, you should be able to get that at Hobby Lobby.
I'm not exactly sure. I just found mine up there on Amazon.
Okay.
I know that up here where I live, Hobby Lobby is expensive.
Yeah.
So I chose not to go to Hobby Lobby.
Okay, guys. If you want to try that, go to Amazon. All right. Anything else? Paul, you have anything else?
No, I do not.
All right. Glenn? The other Paul? Been quiet all evening. You have anything to ask?
No, it's all good so far.
Okay. Well, I think we've gone over just about everything we've done up to date. We've had a good show tonight, good number of people. Like I said, hoping that I can have our guest in for next week. We can start taking this on to the next step. But we've covered a lot in the last, let's see, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 weeks. Show's been going pretty good for 10 weeks. Actually, 12 altogether if you count the 2 that wasn't recorded. But go. But we need to get a few more things covered in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully I can start on mine. So we can go ahead and end this a little bit early tonight, fellas. We don't have much else to discuss. If no one has any questions.
What's your opinion on using old carpet mats and grinding them up and using them for sceneries and stuff? Because I've seen a video of that online.
Carpets?
Carpet matting and grinding it up, and it looks like grass and stuff.
I've only seen that one time done, and I mean, I was firsthand there to see it, put my eyeball on it, and it looks so far from being real. I've seen actually 2 different styles. One with the plastic indoor-outdoor style carpeting, and one with regular carpeting. To make it look similar to a grass. Very non-realistic. Plus the one, for some reason, on the nap style carpet was catching dust. Whether it's electrostatic or what, I don't know, but there seemed to be all kinds of dust laying on there. And again, it's personal preference. You know, if you want to experiment or try it. The only thing I can say is I don't recommend it. But, you know, it's your layout. You all build your layout the way you want to. I'm here to give you some tricks of the hobby, some suggestions, show different ways of doing different things. Just giving you a wealth of information that you can use at your disposal. If you want my recommendations on things, like I said, as far as the carpet is concerned, I don't recommend it. That's up to you, though. All right, gentlemen, and my viewers that's not on the panel, I want to thank you all for coming in. And you have any questions or have anything that you want to see on one of the shows, send me an email, catch me in another hangout somewhere, and we'll put something together. So, in the meantime, we're going to cut this show short and say good night to you all. And thanks again for everybody being here. Good night.